apologies to Capilano Bridge. That game got aborted because I didn't want to play while not streaming. That wouldn't be particularly good. I'll just get a green light from Macaulay that it's working now, and then we'll start playing. Hang on a second, I need to yeah, that should be fine. I said something about that on Twitter, but I just returned today from a family vacation in Italy, and that gave me an idea for how I could structure, or at least try to structure this stream. I thought I will try and play all kinds of various Italians with white, and try and play every single Sicilian I know as black. This, of course, depends on people playing 1e4 against me, but I thought I'll stick with this idea for as long as it seems to be working. And if it gets too boring for, well, you or myself, I don't know, we will switch to something else. Also, I mentioned this in chat, but this so far has been a good day, and it's a bit sad that the picture you see is only sort of, it's cut off at the neck because I'm wearing my official replica English cricket shirt. Today has been a very good day in that respect. Anyway, enough of me talking about non-chess related stuff. Let's start with the challenges. And the first challenge is to see whether it's c4. Okay, so I generally play the Paulsen now, but I played a lot of Paulsens in my previous videos, so let's pick Najdorf for the first black game. I played a great deal of Najdorf in my life when I was more confident in my memory abilities. That was when I was much younger. And bishop g5, I mean, in general, I try not to play the Najdorf against people who might play bishop g5 against me, because there's just too much theory here for my liking. But now that it's on the board, I don't really have any choice. This is probably already not entirely correct, but we'll see how that goes. I did mention in the beginning that it might go very, very badly for me, because these positions are not as familiar to me as some of the other sublines of the Sicilian that I play on a regular basis. He should probably go knight d5 here, actually, because just abandoning the e4 pawn altogether generally is much more painful for white than giving up a whole piece by playing knight d5. But of course, it's a very big decision. But I do think that, you know, in general terms, white gets more play if he opens up the center and gives up a piece than if he does something like this. Although I'm not sure, maybe I should have taken with the bishop. I wasn't entirely convinced either way. But it seems like this should be a reasonably healthy extra pawn, unless I do something badly wrong later. And now I think I should just castle long, because keeping the king in the center, allowing all kinds of knight f5 attempts would be somewhat risky. I still have some issues because the f7 pawn is potentially a weakness, but I think it should be manageable. Not entirely sure. In some of my decisions in the previous part of the game, I think I may have given up a bit too much in terms of counterplay, and now I have to be very careful, because this looks problematic potentially for me. But I still have the extra pawn, so it shouldn't be that bad. But I'm fairly certain that my play has been suboptimal for a while there. But this I'm not that worried about because endgames should be quite good for me generally. Because I have a bishop against the knight. And even if I have to return some of those pawns, I will still have a majority in the center. And he should have played knight a6 check, I think it was. This is the same idea, but I think knight a6 check was a slightly more precise way of doing it. And now these pawns are running very, very fast. I think objectively I should be close to winning here, because here d3 is, I think, very, very strong. And of course allowing e4 is probably a mistake, but I'm not sure there was much he could have done there. And now that the bishop joins the attack, I mean, this has to be a technically winning position now. I can just continue slowly strengthening my position because white has more or less no moves. And once the knight stops hitting on the d3 pawn, I can play e3. And now I can, I mean, this is a bit prosaic, but I can collect in, you know, simplifying into an endgame where I have a whole extra piece is generally a good idea. And I also have 49 seconds, so I should be able to convert this. Okay, so I think I should deal with some of those challenges I have at the bottom of the list, because those people have been waiting for a very long time, and then I'll switch to some kind of a mixture. Okay, no. If there are any ideas on how I can play something Italian related against one d4, one c4, and one knight f3, those are very welcome, and they will probably be relayed to me somehow, although I can't I can't see chat right now. But unless that happens, well, that's a bit. The thing about lines where white goes h4 so early, it works a bit better if black has already castled, as a kind of a general point of reference. You need to have something to attack for this to work properly. This morning I was still in Italy, and tomorrow I will start a very, very long trek towards China to play in Russia versus China summit. Well, they used to be called summits, so I'm still using that word, although I'm fairly certain it doesn't really apply. Summits are different to that. But basically, it's a 5 against 5 Scheveningen match with the Chinese, I think, fielding more or less their first team. I think it's precisely the team that won the World Teams in Armenia. And for Russia, we will be fielding a team which will be 4 people from my St. Petersburg club. Well, that was a bit of a mistake. Bishop f6 was slightly strong. I don't know why I gave up that bishop on a1, but my position is still winning, obviously, because there was so much material picked up earlier on. So this blitz session, I'm trying to fit in some banter in between traveling, and I apologize if I'm potentially slightly slower than usual due to all the traveling I had to do today and will still have to do tomorrow, which requires packing and preparing and things of that nature. Okay, let's look for some of the higher rated ones. I think I played that dude. And this is a 5-minute one, but today is a day of also of funky scream names, so why am I always black? But how can I not play somebody named Kramnik's cat? To my knowledge, Kramnik does not have a cat, but that is immaterial. Okay, I played the Najdorf, so we should do something else. After bishop b5, I'm still sort of in reasonably familiar territory. Had my opponent played d4, though, I would have to play the Sveshnikov or the Kalashnikov, which is something I haven't done even a single time in my entire life, which would have been a bit of a challenge, but we might come to that at some point during this broadcast. Can I call this a broadcast? Probably can. Okay, this is supposed to be fine for black. I played this with white, but I think this is how you're supposed to react to this with black. You play d5 only after d4, so that the e4 square is available to the knight. And if he takes on d5 with the pawn, there has to be a good way of reacting to it. I've been thinking about this for a while, whilst my opponent has been contemplating his next move, and I can't for the life of me remember what you're supposed to do, so I will just do something. I think black more or less has to sacrifice, well, at least, fake sacrifice a pawn regardless of what he chooses, and I like of all the sacrificial options black has in this position, I like the queen takes the best, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe you're supposed to take with the knight, because I did underestimate rook e5. Rook e5 seems like a very decent move here, and now I will have to create something, because this is a bit of a problem. Okay, let's start by doing this. The only half reliable source of counterplay for me here will be the slightly misplaced rook, where white will probably have on c5 in a moment. I don't know why I played queen d7. I was planning to play queen d6, and then I switched at the very last moment. But it's still fine. I mean, the rook will be, it won't be trapped, because it will get to a5 if I chase it further, but it doesn't really do very much on a5, and I'm hoping to get some counterplay here. But I suspect queen takes d5 was not the best. There should be some play for black here. It shouldn't be all that bad, but objectively speaking, this doesn't seem ideal. Okay, let's continue as if nothing happened. I could try something like queen c7 or rook b8, but I feel like occupying the long diagonal will be very useful in most cases, and in particular if white plays knight d2 right now, I can take on d2 and he will not have a comfortable way of recapturing with the queen, because bishop takes f3 will ruin his structure on the king side, which I think is kind of important, because the knight on e4 is an important piece for me, and I don't want to get it to allow it to be exchanged this early, at least. I mean, I don't think I can keep it there for the entire game, but I would like to try and keep it in play for as long as possible. On the other hand, I have no threats, so any kind of normal move makes sense here for white. Something like queen c2 might be a decent move. Knight g2, knight g2, and knight takes d2 might be a decent move. Knight a3, of course, any kind of a move which develops a piece cannot be bad. Although here I might try going after this rook and sort of asking white the question, so what are you planning to do? with the rook if I just keep hitting it. This I thought was not particularly good, because after bishop c6 now the only way not to lose material is to play knight b5. And then white's pieces are very, very entwined, if that's the word I'm looking for. And now I have some very serious threats, like a6 now is a very large threat actually. Although queen b3 might still be fine. To be honest, I don't think white has done any kind of irreparable harm to his position, but I think it wasn't the optimal way to proceed for him. After queen b3 I can play rook b8, or I can play a6. a6 is the more forcing, but rook b8 might objectively be stronger. And after d5 it's a good thing I stopped to talk, because I was planning to go bishop d7, but then queen takes e4 is rather strong. But I managed to notice it in time. But now I've won the pawn back, and white still has all those pieces sort of stuck on the queen side, so I should be doing fine, at the very least. And rook takes a7 is kind of impossible, because I will just take on a7, and after knight takes a7 I can take on b2. And the white king side is will just collapse. I'm also somewhat unexpectedly 2 minutes up on the clock. Yeah, this is not really an improvement over rook takes a7, I think. Bishop takes e3 is a very greedy way to play here. Might also be good, but I generally tend to stay away from really greedy options, especially when I'm playing blitz, because those are, at least to my eyes, they are less fun. And here I should be able to pick up some material, but I actually have so much time I can think. You know, I was about to play something immediately, and then I realized that I have the luxury of actually having enough time to work this out properly, maybe. The rooks on e1 and a5 give me an opportunity to try and do something sharp and tactical, but so far none of the attempts satisfy me completely. Which is sad, because I would like to do something aesthetically pleasing here. I feel like queen b4 has to be winning, but I don't see how. That's very regrettable. And I also wasted a minute and a half on one move without actually coming to any kind of satisfactory solution, which is even more ridiculous. My plan was to go rook a7, and yeah, that's just not very good. I mean, I can do something like this, my position will be excellent, but it's not winning by force. My plan was to do something else, but there were drawbacks to almost any move I could make there. I mean, this is fine and it wins, especially against somebody who has to make his moves so very quickly. But I was looking for something even more forcing. Okay. One off the bottom again. Will I ever get white today? Not that I'm complaining, but the Iron Jesus seems to be favoring the black side today. Okay. Let's maybe try something non-Grunfeld related for a change. considering the fact that I thought this opening, I consider this opening good enough to play it a couple of times in the candidates, I should probably play it more often. I played Queen E8 in the candidates, but that allows a lot of really forcing lines, many of them very drawish, so I should probably do something else, although I'm much less familiar with theory after c6 than I am with theory after Queen E8, of course. As a general rule in the Dutch, allowing e2, e4 unopposed is never a particularly good idea. This move is a bit weird and gives me ideas. But I think I should just stick to the general plan, which was to take on c3 almost against anything and play e5. This is how black generally, I think, approaches this position. So I should stick with it even after a move I did not expect. If white takes and goes e4, I can play f4, closing down the center, because allowing, black's position is fine strategically, but he is somewhat undeveloped, so allowing white to open a lot of files would be very risky. This is an interesting idea. I'm not sure this is mathematically correct, so to speak, but this is interesting. Although, well, that's just a blunder. Actually, I completely forgot about the d6 pawn. But this I actually did see, and this I wasn't afraid of. Bishop takes d6 was much stronger, though. In an attempt to make a move whilst also saying words, I completely forgot that the d6 pawn was hanging. But now I think objectively black should be winning, because I'm 2 pawns up, and my king is, if anything, safer than white's king. And this should be a reasonably straightforward technical task, I feel. The queen on a3 is currently slightly out of play, but I don't think white has much of a chance of keeping it there for any length of time. I can bring it back slowly. I don't need to. My position is solid enough that I don't need to hurry with this. I can maybe even do it as slow as this. And of course, any endgame when you are 2 healthy pawns up should be, a very welcome scenario. Now I'm, very confident saying I'm completely winning. If white had maybe one more pawn on b4, this would be a somewhat difficult technical task, because he has this very nice pawn structure on the queen side. But when I'm 2 pawns up, white just has too many weaknesses. Okay. There was well, I am definitely playing that guy. Hang on a second. Yeah. I must face Jeroxus, and I'm finally white when facing Jeroxus. Awesome. And more Sicilians. Even better. Some kind of an accelerated dragon. You can play c4 here, switching to a type of a Maritz structure, but knight c3 is more fun, especially if I manage not to blunder any pawns like I did the last time somebody played this line against me in a Banter Blitz. After castles, I think I'm supposed to go bishop b3. Yeah, this used to be quite popular when I was playing this line actively. And I remember this idea of taking on a4 and going knight b5 was... I played this against Topalov, I remember, in Linares in '99, I think. And then it was very, very fresh. It was a very new idea and a new approach to a reasonably well-known structure. And it was supposed to be very good. But now, I mean, by now, of course, black players have figured out ways of dealing with this. And it's no longer as fresh. And I don't think it's considered to be as good as it used to in those years. I need to be careful now because I would like to go knight c3, but I also would like to prevent knight g4. I think I should start with h3, but this allows knight a5. I'm kind of worried about knight a5. But I still think preventing knight g4 is quite important, because the bishop on e3 is, the pride and joy of my position, and I need to keep it there. Yeah, and my opponent, of course, does not miss that chance. But I think I can handle this slowly. I think because the knight now is on f6, I can actually play b3 in this position. And if the knight goes somewhere, then I can play rook d1. And once again, the importance of having played h3 earlier is demonstrated once again, because knight g4 would have been an incredibly strong move in this position. And now I've reached more or less the setup that I wanted to reach. The pawns on the queen side in an ideal formation, and the knight on b5 exerting a great amount of control over black's position. And I still need to formulate a plan, because regardless of how nice my position looks, I still need to improve it somehow. But that should be manageable. a3 is... I wanted to play a3, but then black can take on c3 and go rook takes a3, so that's probably not the best idea here. Allowing the exchange of the dark square bishops, I think, should favor white here, because it gives me an easier game. And I will still be playing on the queen side mainly, I think. I don't think I should switch to... Although now that this bishop is exchanged, I might consider doing something on the king side, especially if conditions are favorable, something like this. And if bishop f5 is a decent move, because rook h4 I think was a huge threat, and it's a decent move even here, but I'm trying to see if I can do something forcing here, but I don't really see how. I should probably drive this queen away towards some other squares. Yeah, queen d3 was... I should not have allowed this. This much is very, very clear. That was a mistake, as Lord Jeroxus would say himself. I don't think I should allow this trade. Also, his queen is slightly stuck there on d3. I just realized that it doesn't actually have any moves. This wasn't This looks like a very cunning trap, but I promise you it wasn't. It was queen. I missed queen d3, but I got lucky. There's queen c1. Yeah, and now, I mean, rook e3 is very strong, but yeah, I think objectively I should just make the best move available to me. I think this is very strong. Well, I keep on doing completely ridiculous things. I saw that he can play queen g6 after rook f3, but that he can play rook g6 after rook e3 completely evaded me. Yeah. I think, yeah, now I will probably lose on time, which is regrettable, but that happens. Oblivion. I keep on doing this somehow. I should maybe just make a rule about stopping with the talking when I have less than 10 seconds left, but it feels like cheating to a degree. Anyway, there goes my perfect unbeaten streak, and we'll continue playing, obviously. I'm just, I'm not sure how many of the people watching know who Lord Jeroxus is, but I'm kind of sad I lost to him. I have a golden handlock myself, and I wanted to beat one in chess. That would have been an achievement, but didn't work out. White again. I don't know how I can play anything Italian related against the Caracal. People are not obliging enough today. I wonder if I will end up playing 0 Italian games. I mean, Sicilian with black, yes, but I wanted to play Italian with white, and that does not seem to be materializing. Why did I go castles? Bishop e3 is much more critical on move 6 there, and it's the move I always made in that position, so it's very hard for me to explain to you why I played castles there. That was basically a strange case of a misclick, which is not really a misclick. This is still, of course, very well-known theory, but this doesn't really promise white very much. It's possible to play like this. I mean, I think strong players have done this before, as far as I could remember. And this is not entirely pointless. But I think, objectively speaking, Bishop e3 on move 6 must be the correct way of approaching that position. I actually quite like my position now. Black, somewhere around knight g6, f4, black could maybe try and destabilize something in the center, but now that it seems my knight will reach f3, I think I should be quite happy with how the opening came out for me. I have decent attacking prospects on the king side here. I mean, I'm very tempted by this idea here. I think, especially after knight c7 and rook c8, which seem to me to be slightly slow, I have cause enough here to just start a direct assault on the king side, because if I manage to get f5 in, the c1 bishop also gets included in the attack. And now I just win a lot of material. I mean, sadly, I probably will not be giving mate here because I will just win a piece more or less for nothing. But that's also a favorable outcome for me, so to speak. "40 minutes in, I still seem to have some of my wits about me, so that bodes reasonably well. I used to play this with black a lot when I was younger, assuming he plays g6. c6 I'm not as familiar with, to be honest. I think that, yeah, there's some theory involved with queen a5. e5, knight f3, and then something. But what that something is, I was, never really curious enough to figure out properly. Because this is, rare enough that you don't actually need to prepare for this. You can go. This might, if I castle queen b6, might pick up material, so I should probably pay attention to that. Once again, stopping knight g4 sort of forever is a half decent idea in positions like this, because you will definitely want to put your bishop on e3 at some point, and this bishop needs to be secure. Well, I might even try to save on bishop e3 here and go king h1, because this is also a useful move in most situations, although here it's probably a bit premature. Knight d7, knight c5 seems like black will have a reasonably decent position. On knight d7, rook e8 first, and wait for knight c5. Starting with rook e8 is also perfectly sensible. I would very much like to start some kind of a cavalier attack on the king side, but I don't think it will work particularly well here, so I'll continue developing for now. Playing something like f5 might work out in some situations, but I don't think this is one of them. I think I need to continue bringing my pieces in, and I might play f5 later on, but it's too early. I want to meet knight c5 with knight b3 though. I think this is important, and I think it's a good thing that he doesn't play knight c5 so early, because after knight b3 I would exchange my knight on d4, which it looks nice, but it doesn't really do very much currently. I would exchange it for the knight on c5, which was exerting, or which is potentially exerting a lot of pressure on my e4 pawn. And I will also slightly improve my queenside structure by taking on b3 when he takes on b3. So that would be a decent improvement, I think, to my position. And queen c7 was a wise choice, so as not to allow that. I think it's time to move this knight away from d4, because even c5 and c4 in some positions may have been a threat in the previous position. But here, once again, I feel tempted to start something, because I am, the better developed side at the moment, but I will not be if I continue with my quiet play for much longer. I still need to play something like a3 for now, though. I don't think anything direct was working yet. The plan is to go bishop h6, hopefully trade off the g7 bishop, and then maybe go g4, g5. For all of those things, now that the bishop is on b7, my king on h1 is not positioned particularly well, I have to say. But I felt I needed to commit to some kind of attacking plan here because I didn't like how the game was going if I didn't. Actually, c5, c4 is an even bigger issue for me here than it was a move ago. This is very well played by my opponent. This is now becoming a reasonably serious problem. Because after c4, the center is about to come crumbling down around my ears. And I don't really have a good way of dealing with it that I can see immediately. There will have to be some kind of bluffing involved in with my next decisions. This is now quite clearly not a very good position for me. But I am hoping to create some practical issues for my opponent, because we're both so short of time. Yeah, that wasn't... I sort of apologize to my opponent because this game ended before it really could begin because we both spent too much time in the opening. But I think the sequence starting from this position up to f5, c5, I think I got completely outplayed here. My plan wasn't very efficient at all, and Black, by making good solid moves and continuing with his plan of putting a lot of pressure on the e4 pawn, Black has done extremely well. And after f5, c5, I think White should be objectively in a lot of trouble. Okay. Hang on. We will continue playing all the funky screen names we can find. Although it seems like my browser is somewhat lagging, which ended up depriving me of the opportunity of playing Jon Gustafsson. I will play Jon later on, though. Okay, I thought, I was kind of hoping for more Italians, and I thought I will play all the funky ones. And the first one that came to mind was this one. I remember people used to play this against me when I was a reasonably young player. I always played bishop c4, bishop c5, castles, knight f6 as a boy, and there was another boy, seriously much older than me, in my pioneer's house, which is what those things were called in those years, who played this constantly against me with decent success. This is, I think, maybe even not entirely incorrect. This could very well be actually playable. It shouldn't give White any advantage, but I have a feeling there is no refutation available. One of the bigger points of this line is that on the previous move after bishop g5, if Black plays h6, White can actually play f4 anyway. Otherwise, Black would be almost winning, of course. If Black could get h6 and g5 in, stopping f4 altogether, then Black would be doing very, very well. This is brave. This is actually very brave and somewhat foolhardy, I would say. I don't think black needed to castle into, you know, the entirety of my play. My whole point, the whole point of this opening is to play for this pin, and I don't think black necessarily needed to allow me this much freedom. But this still looks, actually, now that I think about it, this still looks fine for black. Actually, I was probably too harsh in my criticism of that particular decision. But here, I think trying to hang on to this f6 pawn might be very risky. I think black needs to find a way to give it up comfortably. Yeah, like that. I quite like this move. I should still be slightly better because, yeah, I was about to say that queen c5 check. I think this was not a blunder. I did see that this could happen, and I thought that I should be winning here. But maybe I'm not actually winning. Yeah, I thought rook f3 followed by something, and that was really kind of the extent of my analysis. Would be good for me, but the something is not really forthcoming. Can I do this though? As a kind of a slight distraction, maybe I can play b4 for now, and now black has a choice of returning the piece and switching back to the endgame with me having gained a couple of tempi, or doing this. But this now has to be quite bad, I think. I can't really force myself to believe this can work. This has to be, well, at the very least, extremely risky for black. Now that black doesn't have an extra piece. No, resigning, I think, was a bit drastic. Black could play rook d8 or rook c8. I mean, rook e8 or rook d8 here, and I don't really see any mate. But yeah, knight takes b4 was, I think, slightly optimistic. And we get to Mr. Yawn. Let's see if I can play the Volga to any kind of half sensible standard. I probably can't, but you have to try new things. Yeah, that's not very welcome news. This is one of the more solid and unpleasant lines against the Volga. I think I'm supposed to play e6 here, but the positions after e6 are very, very drab. Yeah. Sad Panda is very, very sad. Should have stuck with the Dutch. The Dutch wouldn't let me down as badly as this. I'm fairly sure this is this falls under the "do not try this at home" category. I mean, if anyone is silly enough to watch these videos looking for actual opening advice, do not play b6, g6. I think you will not like the outcomes you will get. But also, probably taking on b6 with the knight after knight bd7 is better than taking with the queen. But we all know this is not really an opening video, so I can take some liberties. Not quite sure what that is, though. This seems like a move which wasn't really forced in any sense of the word. I could maybe even take on b2. I couldn't see how my queen was getting captured there, at least immediately, but I don't like pawn grabbing, to be honest. My, you know, the almost the entirety of my reasoning there was pawn grabbing is bad. I was told that as a child. Let's not pawn grab. Not only is bishop d2 seemingly a slight waste of a tempo, it's also, you could argue it's counterproductive, because now white had to spend a tempo on defending the bishop on d3, which would have been defended otherwise. All in all, not particularly necessary for white, as I already pointed out. Now that my pawn got to a4, I think my structure should be healthy enough and I should be doing well enough. And we get a reasonably typical Volga position where black is not even a pawn down. You know, I would be, a specialist Volga player would probably feel reasonably comfortable even without the pawn on a4, with white a healthy pawn up in a position like this. He would probably consider his position to be slightly worse, but nothing drastic. And with the pawn on a4 still alive, I think we should be quite happy. I can challenge both of those knights, actually. I can play knight c7, knight b5, or I can play knight b6 straight away. But after knight b6, I have a feeling he might go knight a3, so I will go with my original idea, which was to go knight c7 followed by knight b5 and take it from there. I'm also very much ahead on the clock, and my machine is out of juice, which is not the intended outcome. I will have to find my adapter immediately after finishing this game and plug it in, because otherwise there will be an epic failure of this stream. Sorry for flagging you, Jon. I will be back in about 20 seconds. Okay, almost done, and we're still alive. So let's continue with the challenges. Sorry about that mild interruption. I somehow assumed I had more battery life on this machine than I actually do. And this is a 5-minute challenge, which is something I told myself I will try to avoid, but couldn't on that particular occasion. We can pretend this is the Sicilian with colors reversed, right? In keeping with the announced theme of the video. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here, but I didn't want to play anything too obviously theoretical against the English. I will end up having a somewhat substandard not as good a position as I would potentially get had I played something I actually know, but seems like a small price to pay. Lots of people in the list still, and we're almost precisely 1 hour into the show. I can probably manage another half an hour or so. We'll see how many games that is. The bishop on a7 may look slightly looking for a proper term here. But as I was looking for that term, my opponent played d5, which will liven up this bishop no end. I was much more worried about something like d takes c5, which could make this game very, very, well, at least for a time, it could make this game very, very boring to watch. But once white plays d5 and d4, if white plays d5 and d4, the bishop on a7 becomes, a very nice piece. Because the a7 g1 diagonal is now figuring very large in my thoughts. And after this move, I've been thinking about this whilst I was describing the happiness of my a7 bishop. And there is a very drastic way of potentially reacting to this, which I want to try. I can actually play g5 here. Because if the knight goes back, I win 2 tempi. And knight f5, yes, it's possible, but it's actually a full pawn, which is not something to be sniffed at. Is that even a word? Do people say nothing to be sniffed at? I have no idea. And now black just has a healthy extra pawn and still a lot of play on the queen side and on the king side. And I don't even need to play f5 anymore. I might go for the slower plan with eventual h5, because especially now that white has played g3, g4, he has no counterplay on the king side at all. This is kind of inviting exactly what I was trying to do, right? But h5 bishop takes g5, I was trying to figure out if I can do this and then give some kind of forced mate along the h file. But I mean, there are some very nice fanciful ideas there, but they don't seem to work. Although, I mean, we're having fun. At least we're trying to have fun here, so let's do that. I guess my opponent wants to take with the... No, I was about to say he probably wants to take with the queen on g5 by playing queen e3, but it seems like the idea of taking on g5 is not very high on his list of priorities in general. Now this is a somewhat drab, technically winning position, I would say. I'm not even going to take on c4. I don't need this pawn. I think I mean, the game will end much faster if I just win it by direct storm on the king side. And I think trading off this bishop could be a... I mean, I could you could go either way here. You could exchange this bishop on g2, or you could let it leave. But generally speaking, I mean, regardless of what I do here, my position is more or less completely winning. More than less. More rather than less, I mean. We can do it even very, systematically, because as I mentioned earlier, there is no counterplay to be had at all. Let's not even allow Queen A7. This doesn't improve White's fortunes, but I mean, his position was beyond repair. Another subplot I failed to mention up to now is I am somewhat famously 0-2 against Lawrence Trent in these blitz sessions, and it would appear Lawrence is so worried the score might change that he went and found himself a new job, so as not to play me anymore. And know that I can't really blame him, but still I will scroll up and see if he wants to continue beating me senseless. I haven't seen him in the list yet, but the list by now is rather long, and I keep on misclicking on various points on the screen. My apologies, but I do need to check, because this is something that's been obviously bugging me a little bit, and if he's still there, I would like to give it another shot, but seems like he's not. Okay, let's see how this goes. That was the last game of my previous banter, and it went quite badly. So, and it's once again a 3-minute game. The previous one I lost on time in a position I thought was quite decent for me. This is all very heavily theoretical, of course. And I probably shouldn't have gotten involved with this, because I can't really remember anything at all, and he probably can, which is a drawback. The main line starts with bishop f4, e5, and bishop h2, but first of all, it seems to be a forced draw by now, and secondly, it did not really feel like it was particularly interesting to try. Neither is this, though. This, I think, could very possibly be the game between Karyakin and Chaparinov, which was quite good for black, if I'm not mistaken. But once again, I find myself trying to play incredibly sharp forced variations, which I don't remember. It's not a recipe for success in general. Knight e5 is probably the best move here. Black needs to stabilize in the center somehow, stop g6. I wouldn't have, I mean, if I were Nicholas, I wouldn't have allowed g6. I think just on general grounds, why give me this move if you can sort of not give me this move? I understand it sounds simplistic, but sometimes life is reasonably straightforward. But on the other hand, I mean, I still need to prove this leads me anywhere. And yeah, I'm not sure Queen G5 was such a great move because I forgot. I mean, I realized Rook H6 is possible sort of immediately before playing Queen G5, and regretted it immediately, but it was too late to change the move. There's a lot of options available to me here, but none of them seem particularly nice. This is probably not a good move, but the problem with playing these positions on 3 minutes is that you will have to take some decisions which feel wrong, but there's just not enough time to figure out what else you should do. Whoops. Yeah. This whole sequence probably was a reasonably large misplay on my part. I'm hoping to... I mean, if he has to take on e4 here, I think I might be doing okay. Just how okay is hard to judge, but okay. And if he doesn't take on e4, I'm definitely doing fine. So I'm sorry this is sort of descriptive instead of actually explaining my thought process here, but this is a very sharp position which is difficult to play on 3 minutes against a strong opponent. So I sort of by necessity I am now reduced to monosyllabic. Is that a word? Yeah, despite all this, black probably is still doing fine, regrettably. Because bishop g5 check is an incredibly annoying idea. Yeah, or even that. I did win an exchange, but black gets fantastic play for it, obviously, because he has a lot of pawns for the exchange, and my pieces are not particularly well coordinated. I mean, my position is okay, but I think objectively black is fine here. I think it's time for me to simplify here. Not quite sure what the objective assessment of this position is. I do know I have more time there. This wasn't particularly instructive from the actual banter part, but I'm happy to have won a game against Nicholas because he's, I think, generally speaking, stronger than me at fast blitz these days. Uh, let's. I mean, this was a very interesting game, so I feel slightly dirty keeping silent for most of it. Uh, in this position, I thought knight e5 was more natural, and I would have played knight e5 here, preventing g6 altogether, hoping to maybe even play g7, g6 himself later on to stop g6 altogether, and aiming to castle queenside eventually. And after g6 fg, I think I should be doing quite well here, but I need to be much more precise than I actually was in the game. I don't know, maybe knight f4 is decent, but it's incredibly hard to calculate variations on as limited time as we have when we're playing 3-0 in positions like this. Queen g5 is probably a mistake because of rook h6, and now I couldn't find anything that worked. Knight f4 runs into knight takes e4, I think, which is very strong. And one idea was to play knight c6 here. The point being, of course, that if he takes, rook d8 and rook f1 wins. But after knight c6, I felt that bishop b7 might be very, very strong. Solving the problem with rook g8 check, hitting the knight on c6, also hitting the pawn on e4 in later variations. And then after bishop g2, bishop b7, queen e3, maybe he could have just played something like g6, g5 here, I don't know. After queen e5, knight f3, I felt the endgame we got in the game, this kind of an endgame, it appears by force. And objectively black is fine, but in a market change to our previous game, I actually had more time this time around and managed to not blunder anything. Okay, more games. Okay, so far I've played Najdorf, and I tried playing the Sveshnikov Kalashnikov, which I did not succeed in actually getting. But because bishop b5 is featured very heavily in people's repertoires, let's try something else. I don't think I played classical dragon a single time in my... No, I probably have in some must-win games somewhere, but it is very fair to say that I'm not a huge specialist from the black side. This is supposedly the main line. People play bishop takes d4 and queen b6 here now, but old theory used to be e5, and I believe bishop e6. And in this position, I played this position with white. This much I can definitely remember. And I remember I didn't really like it from the black side, but not sure about that though. Generally speaking, in positions like this, there are many situations where you don't actually need to... What I'm trying to say is that the knight very often can stay put. You don't actually need to react to c4 in quite a lot of cases. You can do things like that. But even without the immediate tactic of cd5, cd5, and the white pieces start hanging, I think there are many situations where black can just ignore the fact that the knight is hanging, at least for a while. It's also very important, of course, to keep some control over the d6 square. d6 square is generally, I think, quite important in these positions. And it goes without saying that I don't really know what I'm doing here. I don't. I hope I don't need to repeat this after my every single move here to keep on convincing you that I don't actually know what I'm doing. Yeah, knight takes g5. I was thinking about that. That is definitely a decent move, but I thought I could react by doing this. And if bishop d3, I thought bishop d3 is more critical. I wanted to play e5, e4. And there's a lot of, I mean, after bishop d3, e4, there are 3 white light pieces hanging. And there's a lot of pinning and unpinning going on, and it's a very wild position. But it seemed to me like I'm coming out fine out of the complications there. If I manage to get the g7 bishop included in the game, I should be crushing here. Because the white king is so very unsafe in positions like this. I mean, the moment I play e4, if I ever actually manage to play e4, my attack should be overwhelming. Yeah, case in point. I'm not even going to think about this move. I mean, I need to play e4, and then we'll work out what happens. I mean, I could start with rook b8. It doesn't probably matter that much. Yeah. Bishop b2. He will go king b1, and yeah, I can do it. I can do it the fancy way. I thought about playing bishop b6, but then queen d8 and rook d8 are 2 checks. I'm still winning, but I'm winning slower, I think, than I am here. Sadly, queen b3 stops mate, but I mean, it doesn't change the evaluation. This is just completely and utterly winning for black, of course. I shouldn't blunder queen g4, rook g1 though. And also I should probably pay attention to not getting flagged. Okay, that works. So far we've had one Italian, right? I had such plans for the Italians. Another question I was asking myself when I was preparing for this stream, if I play b4 in this position, it doesn't really count as an Italian, right? So that should not be allowed. I thought e4 castles would be very good for me, but this is some kind of a... This should be punishable somehow, but the somewhat surprising thing about lines like this is that it's not... I mean, they're not really all that bad. You can actually play like this. There's nothing particularly wrong with doing this. Just knight f6 now, yes. And it will probably end up being a perfectly normal position for black. And now actually, if I do something silly on the king side, black can try castling queen side. I mean, if I play h3, there's a very interesting plan available to black. He can play h6 and g5 and then just castle queen side, bishop b7, castle queen side. So I should try and avoid doing that. But bishop g4 is an incredibly annoying threat here. Okay. Now I can at least finish development and I will not get mated. I think instead of castling, bishop g4 was much more critical, and I'm not sure I had an entirely satisfactory reaction to it. This is a bit too slow, I think. I mean, it's in keeping with the general idea of the opening, but I think black could have been more ambitious there. And I should start playing faster. For those of you who don't know, I really like having two bishops against two knights. So it's very natural for me to go for this here. By playing a4, I fix the pawn on b6, don't give black the chance to play b6, b5. And now for the rest of the game, he will have to worry about keeping an eye on this b6 pawn, because the bishop on a3 will be eyeing it basically for, as I said, for the rest of the game. g6 is a bit weird. I don't think black needed to play g6. Despite appearances, this is you know, I mean, it looks like there's only been one exchange, and black's position is, you know, it cannot be all that bad, but it actually can and is. Because of the weakness of the b6 pawn, the knight on d7 is kind of stuck to that square, at least for now. I mean, I did allow knight c5, and black should probably use this opportunity and play knight c5. But what the point I was trying to make is that because this one piece is kind of stuck to its spot, it's very hard for black to create any counterplay. This does exist, though. I mentioned this plan earlier. I mean, it works less well here, because I should play much faster here. Sorry, yeah, I will have to speed up a little bit. After knight h2, I think black should have played g4. Now I think I might be able to stop all this counterplay in time. Yeah, h2, h4, f3. The thing is, if black could sort of magically teleport the knight on from d7 to f4, he'd be doing fine. But the knight is still on d7, and whoops. And now that I've, you know, effectively sealed off the king side, I can proceed with all of my plans for the other side of the board. Unless, of course, I get too short on time and won't be able to convert what is objectively a very large advantage here. My control over the d-file makes this position very bad for black, but of course it might not matter if I don't manage to make all the moves. Yeah, well played, sir. Not particularly surprising that I wasn't able to finish that properly. As I said, it's kind of hard, especially as the session progresses. And I've just glanced at the clock, and it says 10:28 on my clock here. So let's. I still feel slightly alive, so let's make it another 2, and then we'll call it a day. What do we have here? Well, or maybe one final foray into the unknown. A long 5-minute game against somebody who is rated 200 points above me and must be very, very good. And a 5-minute game will actually give me an opportunity to talk properly. And I think that will be a decent way to wrap up. Against somebody rated 2774, I probably should play my own repertoire. Advertise my Grunfeld, or sort of counter-advertise my Grunfeld, depending on how this goes. Yeah, that's not as fun as some of the other lines. Oh, 92 is okay. 92 I don't particularly mind. Also, I'm kind of curious if my recommendation has been refuted, because I had a suggestion for this position in the videos, which I thought was quite good. But I am quite obviously playing somebody who knows what he's doing, so I'm wondering if I need to be revising my own ideas there. Knight a6, at the time of the recording of the videos, was a reasonably fresh idea, which I thought was quite good. But I haven't really been following the events in this line too closely, so I don't know if it has been refuted since then. Another drawback to this is that I can't actually remember what my file says here, which is regrettable. There were some positions in which I was actually advocating castling long, but I can't for the life of me remember if this is one of them. But, I mean, an opportunity to castle long in a Grunfeld should be, I think, welcomed with open arms, whether it's right or not. I do have to do this, though, I think, because if I keep the queens on, I mean, the king on c8 doesn't feel particularly safe if the queens stay on. When the queens come off, though, I feel a lot happier about my situation with my long castle. I'm trying to work out, the reason I fell somewhat silent here is that I'm trying to work out if, I mean, there's a forced line here. I'm trying to assess it and sort of not succeeding. So I think I will end up playing something more becalmed. I probably should have started with rook d7 because he could have played knight g5 on the previous move, which I thought was very annoying. This is just a blunder, actually. I should have made more or less any other move. It doesn't seem to be costing me the game immediately, but it's a mistake. Should have played rook c7. I forgot about rook b1. if I'm entirely honest. Yeah, now I am probably in a great deal of trouble. Because rook b8 mate is a bit of a threat here. And d5 doesn't seem to be helping very much. And if I go rook d8, he will just go rook a3, and this is completely crushing. Yeah, knight b8 was not a good move. Note to self, should probably stop playing really strong players towards the end of those videos. Okay, I don't think I have any choice. But this objectively is, I mean, completely lost. There's no other way to describe this. I'm also very low on time, and yeah, there's no way you can hold this position. It's just very bad. More or less any move wins here. Yeah, that's good enough. This probably will prompt me to play one more, because I don't really want to finish on this note. This keeps on happening to me. On the other hand, picking somebody rated 1700 and beating him will feel a bit hollow, so let's do, hang on, that's a bit of a mistake. Sorry for this scrolling. Oh, hang on. I need a decent pick for the last game of the day. Sorry, and I also can't seem to be able to click where I want to click. And this is the final game of the day. The previous one was a bit painful also. I feel very sad about not being able to remember my own suggestions. But it is rather late in the day, and I will try and pretend this is the reason my memory is failing me. Although it's not. This is a tricky position. I've always kind of wondered how you're supposed to play it. Black gets this kind of a setup going where he has a huge pawn wall blocking off all of my potential advances, both on the king side and the queen side. Apparently my opponent has just started drinking. Well, I've been playing for an hour and 40 minutes, so I don't think it's as unfair as he's trying to portray. And white will try to open up the position somewhere. I'm not entirely sure where for now. I will continue playing somewhat slowly and playing sort of all over the board to improve my position everywhere slowly, and now I'll see what my best plan of action is. And now I think my hand has been forced, because the moment I can get this, the moment I can start threatening g4, I think I should immediately take this chance. Although it seems like I am now the one getting mated, which is which has not been the plan. But I think I can cover the king side for now by doing this. It did take me very much by surprise. I am quite obviously not as well versed in the plans available to both sides in this structure as my opponent. Didn't even occur to me that queen g8 and queen h7 is a possible plan here, and it quite obviously is. And now, because my queen is on g2, I can't really play g4 because I really don't want to exchange the f2 bishop for the knight. So I will have to be very careful here. I don't know why I put the bishop on e2, to be honest. One of the plans I was considering was to play, to try and transfer my king somewhere towards the queen side, actually. And this is now sort of between difficult and impossible. Also, rook b3 is a very weird move. I don't need it on b3. I don't know why I'm doing this. Yeah, this is not an easy position to play on very limited time. Okay. This I shouldn't mind all that much, because now at least I know I'm not getting made. Here I blundered knight takes f4, but luckily my opponent did warn me that he has been more sober at some point during the evening, and this goes unpunished. And now I actually managed to round up and maybe even collect the pawn on c6, which is quite good. Once again, this should, objectively speaking, be a reasonably easy technical task. Let's make it harder by sacrificing something unnecessarily. Completely unnecessarily, actually. I really dislike this choice now. But knight e3 was a mistake. I mean, he should have done something else. Yeah, I misplayed that part as well, but that should probably still be enough. Because the bishop on g6 actually controls the all-important diagonal. The ending of that game wasn't particularly instructive, because I managed to play faster and blunder less than my opponent. That was mainly it. But I will take that final victory, because to be honest, losing the last game of the session just sort of made me sadder than I expected it would the last time I did this. So I'm happy it didn't happen again. And on this note, I think we'll wrap up this session. I'm leaving tomorrow to play this Scheveningen against the incredibly strong Chinese players. Who knows how that will go. And I will return somewhere around the 22nd, and we'll try and schedule more sessions after that, between that moment and the Russian Super Final, which starts on the 8th of August. I hope you've enjoyed watching this. I think this, I mean, this definitely went better than I expected, all things considered, and I will try and think of more ways of improving these sessions as they continue, and as I get more experience. Thanks for watching. This has been Peter Svidler for Chess24.